While compiling the book on the history of Golden, I was given a fantastic article written by the late Baba Stritch, Margaret Stritch, Mead Lake, which was written in the early 1990s. Unfortunately, now Baba is now deceased, but I think this recollection of hers gives a great insight into Golden around the 1930s. And I'm just going to read it, and you can take what you like from it. The picturesque village of Golden lies in the heart of the Golden Vale and is situated on both banks of the River Suir, which flows through the village on its journey to the sea. In fact, Golden got its name from that very river, which separates and branches out in the shape of a fork as it nears the bridge, giving the name An Gowleen. Incidentally, this bridge is one of the most famous bridges in the country. Way back in the year 1690, King William signed the Charter of Cashel on it, and when passing over the bridge gave these orders to his men: "Spare your powders, lads, this land is worth fighting for." The ruins of the old Norman castle still stand on the side of the riverbank, which probably goes way back in history. In the 1930s, Golden was a prosperous village. There were 9 grocery shops, 4 public houses, 2 garages, a draper's shop, butcher's stall, newsagents, Garda barracks, post office, bakery, forge, a corn mill and store, a Church of Ireland and a Catholic church. There were 52 houses and a population of approximately 200. In the post office, 5 postmen were employed to deliver mail, parcels, etc., and also a boy to deliver telegrams, as at this period phones were not as plentiful as now. The postman's job was a hard one, as delivery was done either by cycling or perhaps walking. This was especially hard going at Christmas, with all the extra parcels and mail. Late night saw postmen returning home. The outgoing mail and parcels were also taken into Cashel each day, and this work was also done on a bicycle. All this delivery was hard work, especially in winter time, during frost and snow and probably bad roads. Incidentally, the present postmistress is the fourth generation of her ancestors who ran the post office many years ago. Her great grand aunt, Mrs. Susan Fleming, who was a former teacher in the school, was the postmistress at the time in the 1930s. The forge was another landmark in the village, a meeting place for local farmers and all others who came to have their horses shod. While awaiting the job to be done, quite a few stories mixed with some local news was the order of the day. The anvil could be heard going most of the time. Timber wheels were also banded on the banks of the river at the turn of the bridge, and the spot is still called the Bandon. The blacksmith in the early 30s was James Ryan. The Ryans had been in business for generations in Golden and also in Ballinaclough. When Jamesy retired, Packy Forrester took over, and then Stephen Corvin, who was known as Busty, took over. He was the smith until about 1950. Afterwards, Ed Jenkins and Eddie Fitzgerald carried on the business, but gradually the trade declined due to the scarcity of horses and the disappearance of the bandit wheel. There was also a ford in Bawnbrack, which was owned by Dick Walsh. He transferred to Tipperary in the late 20s. There, as well as the usual blacksmith and farrier work, he specialised in the shoeing of racehorses. He attended racecourses all over the country and beyond. In his early days, he spent some time at Rathduffe Stud. The Bawnbrack Stud continued under the management of Dick's sister Sarah. She used a hired blacksmith for many years subsequent to 1925. Dick's son, David, still carries on the business in Tipperary. During this period of the 1930s, the parish priest was Father Edmund O'Kane. Our curates at the time were Father Matt Sampson, William Hogan and Tim English. In the Church of Ireland, Canon Empson was the rector, and services were held every Sunday. In the graveyard attached to the Church of Ireland, there were approximately 12 Catholic families of the older generation from Golden buried. Our curate, Father Willie Hogan, was very interested in card playing, and card games were held in the old parochial hall every Sunday night, and a good crowd always attended. Whist drives were also held. During the interval, tea and buns were served by local ladies. Kettles of water were boiled on an open fire, and oil lamps were used for lighting. No ESB or piped water in those days. Father Hogan also ran what was called Newcomers' Hour, when local talent used to compete in singing, dancing, music and recitation, and a nice prize was always available for the winner. What fun it used to be. Father Hogan also ran a gymkhana over in Castle Park, an event which everyone looked forward to. During this period, there was only one Mass on a Sunday, which was at 10:30 a.m. Every first Sunday of the month, Holy Communion was distributed to the parishioners at 8 a.m. People had to come in to receive, fasting from midnight, then go back home for breakfast and be back again at 10:30 for Holy Mass. Most people walked, some had bicycles, and some had horses and traps. Perhaps some had cars. Every New Year's Eve the church bell was rung to welcome in the new year. No one went to bed until the early hours of the morning, and a band from Thomastown usually came and played on the street. Everyone sang and danced and wished each other a Happy New Year. Children of this particular era in the 30s made their own amusement. 2 greens were used for most of the games. In fact, the local Fontenoy's hurling club used to practice on the green, as they had no field of their own at that time, only a rented one. Children played hurling, football, running, jumping, etc., and also a tennis court was erected on one of the greens. Rounders, skittles, conkers, trance and many more games were played on the streets, as there were no traffic problems then. During the frosty weather, the middle of the street was used for skating. In the springtime, skipping ropes and spinning tops appeared. Pitch and toss, marbles and hardball, etc. were played down in the mill yard and also at the top of the church lane. Halloween, or Snap Apple Night as we used to call it, was a great night of enjoyment for a lot of children in the village who used to meet in Tom Blake's house. Apples on cord hanging from the ceiling, hands tied trying to snap at the apple, and 3p pieces in the basin of water. Such fun. And then to finish the parties, we had plenty of ghost stories which really terrified us. Summertime was also a great time, as most of the school holidays were spent down by the river, walking under the bridge in the arches, catching eels. The bigger boys and girls used to go swimming. The girls down the river, the boys up the river in the deeper part. A boat was also available during the summer for trips up and down the river, kindly given by manager Kelly. Music was also played on the boat. It was so beautiful in the summer's evening. The annual river race was also an event to look forward to, and it was such fun to watch. During these years there was no television or radios, and radios were scarce, so all young children looked forward to the annual visit of the circus on the green, which was with all the amusement stalls, swinging boats, etc. This was such a great event. Also, a few times a year we had travelling cinemas on the green, and to the children it seemed like going to the biggest cinema in Dublin. These 2 events were really the highlight of our lives. The only worry was how to procure the money for the circus and the cinema, which was probably only a few pence. A big change from then to now. The school. Up to 1936, children from the village attended the old school on the Abbey Road. The late Tom Maguire was the principal. Miss Sarah Russell also taught in the school at that time. There were 110 pupils on the roll. Hurling and football were the games played by the boys during lunchtime. Drinking water was also brought each day from a well by the riverbank, and each evening 2 pupils swept and tidied the classroom for the following day. Also, come winter, children brought money to help purchase coal for the heating of the school. There were 2 big fireplaces, one at each end of the school. Each day, some of the children collected some sticks to help start a fire in the morning. The annual visit of the inspector was a special day, all dressed up, but dreading the question they would be asked. The only consolation was that we got to go home early. Another enjoyable day was the visit of the photographer, as we had so much time off taking the pictures. One of the photographs, taken in 1929 in the Abbey School, appeared in the Sunday Tribune. It was taken by the late Father Brown, whose famous collection of photographs. There were no biros in school then, and pupils were not allowed to use fountain pens, just the plain nib. In 1936 the children transferred to the parish hall in Golden, while awaiting the opening of the new building, which was finished in 1937. In those years, children did not leave national school until approximately 14 years, as there was 7th grade at the time, and children did not start school as early as now. After leaving national school, pupils attended schools like the Presentation Convent in Cashel, the Christian Brothers in Cashel, and the Technical School in Cashel. There were no buses in the early years, and they had to cycle in and out from Cashel in all kinds of weather, and some of them cycled in again to the Technical School for night classes. Prior to the division of Mantle Hill in 1935, Mantle Hill Estate was originally a large tract of land, 800 acres, mainly grazing, meadows and groves. It belonged to Vincent Scully, from whom T.P. Kennedy purchased it. The estate was eventually taken over by the Land Commission in the 30s and divided. Before the division, there were only 6 houses on the estate. Now there are 42. This shows the extent of the employment in these days. Ditches had to be erected for the division, and 25 Land Commission houses built. So the good employment was a boost to everyone at this time. In the division, a field was given to the local hurling club, and is at present one of the finest fields in the country, with added amenities recently erected. Land was also given for the new cemetery and also for the new school. In 1930, Tip won the Triple Crown in hurling, and the Golden Club had the honour of having having a hurler on the team, the late Dan Luby, who played with the juniors. Also in 1937, Tip won the All-Ireland by defeating Kilkenny in the final, which was played in 1937 in Killarney. The late Bill O'Donnell played on that team. 2 buses left Golden on that morning for the game and arrived back sometime the following morning, all jubilant with their win. During these years, the late Tom Malumby had a corn mill and store going, which gave quite a lot of employment to the local community, especially during the corn season. Loads of corn were delivered from local farmers and from the wider area, and it was a busy place all day and every day. The local creamery was in full swing during these years and was owned by the local farmers. There were 100 suppliers of milk at the time. When the cream was separated, it was carted in churns to Outhrat by horse and cart, where it was made into butter. One wonders how the cream kept fresh travelling by cart on a hot summer's day from Golden to Outhrat, which is just outside New Inn. Butter was brought back from Outhrat in 56-pound boxes and had to be made up in £2 and £1 portions for the farmers and the local shops. Hot water was available for the village people, especially on Monday mornings, to do their weekly wash, as there were no washing machines or piped hot water back then. Also, quite a few people kept pigs in those days and were available to get buckets of separated milk from the creamery when the farmers were supplied. Local shops were supplied with fresh bread every day from a bakery in the village. Coming home from school in the evening, probably hungry for our dinner, the smell of fresh bread coming from the bakery would make us even more hungry. Water used for drinking purposes was brought from the well beside the old mill on the banks of the river. There was also a pump in the street, but people preferred the water from the well. During the summers of those years, most of the farmers had to drive their cattle to the river, perhaps twice a day for a drink. The farmers with land on the river bank were especially lucky. 1932 saw the Eucharistic Congress held in Dublin. Golden was decorated with flags and bunting, and quite a few people from the village went to Dublin by train from Cashel Station. We also had a bus service, the famous Princess bus, which travelled each day from Tip to Clonmel and back. It was the only mode of transport for most people, and it was well availed of. Coming to the end of the decade of the 30s, we were all looking forward to the opening of the new Poplar Hall, which eventually opened in 1941. It was famous all over the country and further afield at a later date. Ballygriffin Platform was a great spot for dancing in those days, about a mile from the village. Crowds used to go up there every Sunday night. Great music and plenty of old-time dancing. The courthouse in the village was also used for dancing during those years in the centre of the village. There used to be 2 fairs in Golden at that time, the 26th of May and the 26th of October. Also, a local landmark which can't be left out was the once famous Big Stone, which was situated down at the end of the village. For many years it was a meeting place for people of all ages. Young and old met there. The latest news and all the gossip were recorded. Many a summer's night we sat there until bedtime. Sometimes music was played there in the good old days, but sadly the Big Stone is just a memory of the past, and I sincerely hope all the people who sat there over the long years and are not with us anymore are now enjoying the happiness of heaven. Today Golden has, well, in the 1990s when this article was written, Golden had 72 houses and a population of 250. 2 food stores, 3 public houses, post office, butcher's stall, boutique, hairdressing salon, 2 garages, co-op store, 2 newsagents, Garda barracks, a library and a video library. Things were a little bit different, and I'll just quickly read through the names of the shops that were in Golden in the 1930s. Charlie Hogan had a garage and petrol pumps. O'Brien's had a groceries. Patrick J. Cunningham had a pub, grocery, bakery, newsagent, garage, petrol pumps. Josie O'D had a grocery. Michael O'D, bicycle repairs. J.P. Kennedy had a grocery and a light hardware. P.C. Blake from Mantle Hill had a store. Anne Blake grocery. Bridget Horan grocery. T. Kelly butcher. J. Shore grocery. Barry's had a pub and groceries. Tim O'Neill had a pub in the early 30s, and in the late 30s it was owned then by Mikey Ryan. Michael Blake had the groceries. Mrs. Hickey had the groceries. Teddy Burnett had the groceries. John Norris butchers. John Guilfoyle draperies. May O'Neill pub. There were the creamery stores. Willie and Jimmy Doyle had a boot and shoe repairs. Malumley's had a store. Mrs. O'Connell at Bonbrack had the groceries. May O'D was a dressmaker, and Mike Marr was a tailor. And that's that. Just to finish the article, it says Margaret Babba Stritch Nee Blake was enrolled in Golden National School on the Abbey Road in July 1920 and attended until July 1931. Incidentally, in compiling this book on the history of the school, for a number of years in the roll book, every child that was enrolled in the school, their parents worked in or around the village of Golden. There was nobody left the parish boundaries for work, which just shows in the 30s and the 40s what a thriving village Golden was. I suppose the opposite can be said today. A large number of the parents in the local area are working outside the parish boundaries for whatever reasons and travelling further afield.